G'day mate, 40 here, hanging out in front of the Royal Casino, and just amazing walk around Sydney. I just don't see any open defecation. Like, where's the open air drug dealing? I've only had one person ask me for money. Right? And the public lavatories here, they're just amazing. I mean, there's no drug dealing going on in the restrooms here, no prostitution going on in the restrooms here. What an amazing country. You can have all these nice things here. You can have public lavatories here that are not overtaken by filth and degradation, right? America has a dramatic shortage of public lavatories. That's why people love the rise of Starbucks. Because finally you had a lavatory, but in Australia they got lavatories everywhere. There's no drug dealing going on inside of them. You don't have to step around poo on the streets, right? There aren't, open air urinals like in San Francisco. I'm outside the Crown Casino. So when I go for a walk, I don't have to worry about, where's the loo? Because members of the Ford family, all right, they can never walk past a public lavatory. Right? That's just not how we roll. I mean, I'm not like some of those women I've dated who could climb Mount Hood without ever needing to go to the loo. But you get to have nice things in Australia because you got nice people. You don't have the epic, antisocial, destructive super predators who seem to wreck life consistently in Los Angeles and San Francisco and Chicago and New York City and Washington, D.C., Seattle. Instead, you get to have free open spaces with clean, useful public facilities. You have high rates of social trust and social cohesion. Like, public spaces get to be nice places. You get to go for a walk and you don't have to worry you're going to get mugged. This surely is the lucky country. Just hanging out here on a lovely little walk. Just enjoyed, the nicest, cleanest bathroom. Like, I'm just thinking, why can't we have, nice stuff like this in America? Like, why do I have to come to Australia to enjoy a higher quality of life? I mean, there's just no doubting there's a much higher quality of life in Australia because there's low crime, high social trust, high social cohesion, sense of we're in it together. You get to have nice, clean public spaces. Our government is on your side. What's not to like about that, mate? G'day mate, 40 here. So, you've probably heard about how Australia is an island prison. Well, you have to really experience it. It's not enough just to see the clips on Fox News, but look at how people are oppressed. I mean, everyone just in an island prison, just quietly doing what the government tells them to do. And look how brave they are. trying to hide their suffering, under the pose of eating out, having a good time, going to lunch with friends, going to work, hanging out with family. Look at this brave front by the Australian prisoners here, how they're suffering. Right, the government's just got them in an iron grip. Yeah, they bravely try to carry on, stiff upper lip and all that. This is what life is like in an island prison. All the government restrictions. The complete loss of liberty, autonomy, it's all gone now. You can't even drive drunk. You can't beat your wife. All those treasured Australian freedoms, all a thing of the past, mate. You probably think, they don't make Aussies like they used to. You see how they're bravely trying to hide their pain. Gambling over there at the Crown Royal Casino, eating out at fancy restaurants, going on whale watching tours. But look at the violence inherent in the system. Look how frightened these people are of their oppressive central government. Look how cowed they are. Just absolute shells of their former selves. And bravely just trying to carry on like it's normal. Trying to smile through their tears. Just trying to keep up appearances as though this is normal life. But you can sense the underlying desperation, the frustration, the absolute terror, the depression. This is not life, guys. This is life under a prison state. This is life in a police state. This is life in a surveillance state. All our treasured liberties just as things of the past, mate. But we have to keep up the pretense, at least for our children, right? We gotta be pretending to have a good time. We gotta pretend that life is just going on. But the oppressive hand of big government is just always looming over us. No matter how bravely we try to keep up appearances, like the pain and the desperation just keeps breaking through. G'day mate, 40 here. There's a terrific book called The Tyranny of Distance. So from the very beginning, it took approximately 3 times as long to get from England or Europe to Australia as opposed to from England or Europe to the United States. So in the 17th, 18th century, I think it took about 30 days of sailing to get to the United States from England. But to get to Australia, it took 3 times as long. And so Australia's always felt itself particularly isolated from the rest of the civilized world. And because it's such an enormous country with such a relatively small population, it's needed a big government to make the whole thing work. So you're flying doctors or get in a plane and help someone with some dire medical emergency in outback Australia. Transportation of goods is more expensive. So even though it's 2022, we still experience the tyranny of distance. I paid $185 extra for a direct flight from LAX to Sydney. I was still in the air for 15 hours, right? And the plane was absolutely jammed full, and every seat was taken. Right? That is not an easy flight. 15 hours in economy. Like I tried to take it easy on the water so I wouldn't have to get up and use the loo. Now, good on Delta, they kept the lavatories clean and immaculate, good service from the crew, but we were jammed in and I couldn't shift my seat back. But the people in front of me, yeah, they could tilt back onto me. So 15 hours like that, squish squash. Right? I got to experience the tyranny of distance. So some of the offerings for the flight home, like some of them, like no extra charge, like 40 hours. There'd be like a 23-hour stopover in some godforsaken Asian city. So I was willing to spend $185 extra for direct flight. A direct flight back from Sydney to Los Angeles is 3 hours shorter. It's about 12 hours because you're going with the wind. But coming to Australia from California, you're going against the wind. But do kind of feel, you know, on the edge of the world here. So we had a former Prime Minister of Australia, Paul Keating of the Labor Party, was Prime Minister approximately 1990 to 95, referring in particular to the shape of the southern part of Australia, says that Australia is the a-hole of the world. Right? Looks like the bottom of Australia looks like a pair of buttocks. So there's self-hatred in Australia. You do kind of feel isolated here. So about half the Americans who move to Australia with the intention of living here end up going back to America because the sense of isolation kind of gets to people. At wide open spaces. Now, relatively small population to wide open spaces means that things like COVID and the Spanish flu don't spread nearly as easily in Australia. Right? We have lots of room here and the water pressure is just to die for. I tell you, mate, the water pressure is probably 10 times more intense here in Sydney compared to Los Angeles. So a lot of abundant natural resources. Isn't that our new national anthem starting in, I think, 1983? We shifted from God Save the Queen, which we had until 1983 as part of the British Empire, and we developed our own national anthem in 1983. It's Advance Australia Fair. Something like with wealth for toil as part of the national anthem. Right. Abundant opportunities to make lots of money here. Looking like a lovely hailstorm hitting you unexpectedly in Sydney. Sorry. People huddling together for warmth.